This is a story from Korea, which I'm doing by way of a little practice. It's about two old people. Two old people who, for the purpose of the story, we'll call Mr. and Mrs. Parks, because that's what they were called. Mr. and Mrs. Parks lived on the edge of town by the forest. They were very elderly. They were the sort of people, the sort of old people, you didn't quite know how old they really were. They were small, wiry people. She was bent double with arthritis, and he, though was sprightly for his age, was clearly feeling his age somewhat. They'd been married for many, many years, and were the sort of couple who, at times, didn't speak. They knew each other's thoughts. They sat in silence. They enjoyed the silence. They enjoyed being in each other's company. And they knew they were well liked in town. People would come and chat to them as they sat outside in their garden. They kept vegetables and lived as best they could off their own land, and had done so for many years. They were well liked, well loved. Everyone knew about them. Everyone respected them. They knew about animals. They knew about worldly things. And they knew about matters of the heart. Their only regret was that they had had no children. But beyond that, they were happy in themselves. And as they came into their twilight years, that happiness only increased and enriched. Now one day, Mr. Park was sitting in the kitchen preparing a meal when he heard a blackbird outside. A blackbird giving out a warning cry. He recognised it immediately and looked out the window. I wonder what's happened, he thought. He went about his business preparing the meal, peeling potatoes, cutting some onions. Then he heard it again, and again, and again. He looked out and realised that he could see in the corner of his yard a young blackbird that had been injured, and that it must have been his mother crying out. He went out into the yard, and indeed there was a blackbird with a broken wing. He looked round, but the mother had disappeared. So he picked the young blackbird up with both his hands and took it inside. "What are you going to do with that?" said his wife. I'm going to fix it. I can see where the break is," said Mr. Park. "I'm going to fix this young bird." "Oh, you know what a mess they make," said his wife. "And such a bind looking after these birds. I'll do it. I've done it before, and I'll do it again. I still have that cage from the last bird I helped." And that's what he did. He prepared a splint, put the splint on the bird's wing, and put the bird into the cage. It hopped around and looked up at him and gave a little tweet. "He's hungry," said Mr. Park, and gave him some food. And thus he looked after him for about 10 days, and the bird miraculously got better. He started flapping round the cage, and Mr. Park said to his wife, "I'm going to release it, but I'm going to take it into the woods a bit and let it go there. I think it'll be safer there. I think a local cat got it last time." So early one morning he scooped it up out of the cage and started walking into the woods. He released it, and the bird flew off and disappeared. Mr. Park smiled. It was good to see the little bird looking so healthy, and good that it had flown off to go and live a good life on its own in the woods with its own kind. And he returned home. But he couldn't get the little bird out of his mind. It was a beautiful little blackbird. The most beautiful bird he'd ever seen. I don't think he'd ever seen blackbirds close up, but when you were close to them, their colours in the blackness are quite extraordinary. About a week later, Mr. Park heard a blackbird singing on the edge of the woods. And he wondered to himself, is that my bird? I'm going to go and see. He turned to his wife and said, I'm just going to the woods. I'll see you in a minute. So he set off down to the woods. He felt a bit stiff that morning, a bit arthritic, like his wife. But he managed to get to the edge of the woods where he heard the bird singing, and he looked up, and to his astonishment, there was a blackbird singing beautifully in the woods, just above him on a branch. I bet that's the bird, he thought, and then it flew off deeper into the woods. So, without thinking, he followed it. It landed on another branch a few hundred meters down the track. Mr. Park set off into the woods, stepping over the logs and branches, and just for the fun of it, followed the bird. It went deeper and deeper into the woods, stopping on one tree. Mr. Park would catch up and moving on again. It was a warm morning. Mr. Parks hadn't had any tea that morning, and he was thinking, oh, I'm thirsty. But just then they came to a clearing where there was some marsh grass, and there was obviously a stream or something in the middle. The light was streaming through into the glade. It's really quite pretty, and the bird stopped at the far side of the clearing. So Mr. Park made his way forward, and then he realised in the middle of the glade, in the middle of the clearing, was a beautiful clear spring, bubbling up over white and black rocks into a pool. It was the clearest water he'd ever seen. It looked astonishing in amongst the grasses. He felt very thirsty. So without thinking, he knelt down on the side mud and scooped up some water and scooped up some more. As it went down his throat, it felt beautiful. It sat in his stomach. And, oh, it's the best water I've ever had, he said. And he scooped up some more and some more. And he scooped up with both hands. So he drank as much as he could. And then he happened to glance at his hands. And he thought, that's strange. My liver spots have gone. My hands, they look so much younger. And then he glanced into the pool itself and caught a slight reflection of himself. His skin, the wrinkles, they'd all gone. He started moving his arms. Thought, I can move my arms. I can move. I've got no feeling of arthritis in my fingers like this morning. And then he touched his face. It was smooth and it was young. And he felt amazing. This water, he said, and drank some more and more. And as he did so, the energy that flowed through his body, and he started jumping up and down on the spot. I'm young, he said. I'm young. And he jumped in the air and he ran back to his house. Wife. He flung open the door. Wife, look at me. I'm young. And his wife shouted, Who are you? I'm your husband, he said. And before her stood a man she'd not seen for 60 years. The man she had married. Well, what's happened? What's happened to you? And he told her all the story about following the bird into the forest, and there was the water, and he drank it, and he drank it, and he drank it, and this, look, and he did a somersault. Look at me. It's amazing. You must come. Come. And he helped his wife out of the house and made their way slowly through the forest to the glade, the bird was there, still singing. He brought me here. He brought me here. I'm sure of it. Look, drink water. Drink the water. And he helped his wife down by the water and said, drink as much as you can. She scooped up some water and drank it. And drank some more. And drank some more. And before his eyes, his wife turned as young as he did, some 60 years before. It's a blessing. It's a blessing, they said. They turned and went home. Now, of course, in the village, everyone got to hear about what had happened to Mr. and Mrs. Parks. They have been rejuvenated. Have you seen them? They're like a young couple. And I can't imagine what's happened to them. And everyone wanted to know what happened, but everyone was polite, discreet. That was the way of the village, apart from the mayor. He said to himself, I must know about this. I must know about this. He was a wily old man. He was a businessman. There was surely some money to be made out of this. So the mayor, Mr. Wu, made his way to see the Parks. And the Parks were a lovely couple, and despite feeling a lot younger, they were inclined to share their good news. Well, they said, we haven't told anyone, but there is a pool in the forest where if you drink it, this happens. And Mr. Wu said, that's it, very well. And then he turned around and said, where is it? It's in the forest. Just follow the blackbird, said Mr. Parks. Follow the blackbird. I think I can hear him now. Mr. Wu turned around and said, I will. Okay, bye. And he rushed out of the house. Parks turned to each other and said, it's good to share. It's good to share good news and good to share good things, isn't it? I'm sure Mr. Wu will enjoy the experience and come back a better man. He's not very nice, if truth be known. If truth be known, he's not very nice at all. An hour passed. 2 hours passed. 3 hours passed, and Mr. Wu had still not come back from the forest. And the Parks looked at each other and thought, that's strange. He should be back now. He should be back a long time ago. We better go and see what's happened. So they set off into the forest. They came to the glade where the pool was, and they couldn't see Mr. Wu anywhere. They searched across the area, through the grass, and then they suddenly spotted in the rushes a pile of Mr. Wu's clothes. And then they heard something. They heard a baby crying. And they went over, and behind a tree near the water there was a baby. And they looked closely at the baby. Now, what I should have told you that Mr. Wu had a particular mouth, kind of upside down mouth. You know the sort. One of those funny smiles. Nice on some, nice on most. And they looked at the baby and thought, he's drunk too much. He's become a baby. Now, they knew too that they couldn't leave the baby in the forest. So they scooped him up and they took him home and brought it up as their own. Now, the story doesn't say if Mr. Wu became a miserable old person like he was in the previous life, but I'd like to think because the Parks were such a lovely couple, that Mr. Wu was awful as lovely as them. That is my story.